This is Movies, a podcast about the act of cinema. I'm your host, LowRes, and today we are holding a three-program spectacle crossover event with dissecting cinema and ratings, hosted by Jerry Jensen and Jacob A. Miller, respectively. The film we are discussing is the 2019 remake of Jacob's Ladder.
We had our own world down there for a while. Not anymore.
So Jacob's Ladder 2019. What a unexpected feature to be covering for today's episode, and also just in general. I that was not a movie I ever pegged to receive a remake, especially the type of remake that it did receive.
I was going to say, this one came out of left field because remakes of big properties like this, like Jacob's Ladder, is definitely a classic in regards to a lot of people, especially with Tim Robbins, who was on a hot streak at the time, the early 90s. And so you'd think for something that has a name like Jacob's Ladder and a reputation, you would think there'd be more, I don't know, more fucking of a shit to give into the production or the promotion of this movie. But like, what is this even being released in theaters?
I think it did receive a limited theatrical release this past week.
You believe it did?
I can't be certain. I heard someone else say that it did.
I think that shows a lot of faith in what they had produced, that nobody's really heard about this apparently, and nobody knows where to see it.
And I also think that the prime opportunity to release a remake of this caliber for that kind of movie was probably 2005 to 2010, when they were really churning these types of movies out. You had countless remakes of the George Romero films and this and that, and all the 70s properties were getting scooped up and repurposed back in the aughts. It seems so bizarre to now suddenly be like, yeah, Jacob's Ladder 2019. And it is. I was right in that it is kind of like a sideways remake of the movie Brothers with Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire. It felt like they really wanted to do that instead.
Mm-hmm.
But they could afford Jacob's Ladder.
I think you made an interesting point that it feels like it should have come out somewhere in the mid-aughts, like 2005, for example. That's exactly what I was thinking when I was watching this movie. I said, okay, first of all, we have Ricky from Barbershop as the lead man. Who is he really an effective lead man? I still don't know the actor's name after all these years. But then it also has that very bland or pedestrian type feel that there were for films or remakes in the mid-2000s. Like, it had that very kind of straight-to-DVD production quality and aura to it. It was just almost aimless while I was watching it.
I don't know if I would agree that it had a direct-to-DVD quality to it. I thought it was actually surprisingly well shot and colored, given the nature of the film. I've seen countless of those direct-to-DVD sequels and remakes that look like complete shit, that no competent individual worked on the production side of things.
Well, even if it doesn't hit like that super low bar of like direct-to-DVD films, the way it's sold is as Jacob's Ladder 2019, and yet it actually doesn't tell anything in relation to the story of Jacob's Ladder, other than one dude is in the military and maybe a drug made him sad or something. Other than that, it's really not even a remake. It's just got the name to it. It's not. It doesn't explore any of the same themes. It doesn't use any of the same, visual scares that Jacob's Ladder has. Jacob's Ladder is a genuinely creepy movie, and this doesn't even feel like it fits in a genre that would be qualified anywhere near horror or creepy or anything. It's sort of a drama.
Yeah, I was thinking that myself. Watching it, I was thinking, well, what does this classify as? Maybe we can check its billing during the show, but is this supposed to be a thriller? Because it was just a weird kind of family melodrama for most of it between, I'm going to call him Ricky, because I still don't know his name, Ricky and
Michael Ealy,
Jesse Williams, and that's really all there was there. And then they threw in spooky guys with creepy faces like here and there, but there was no intriguing mystery here. There was nothing engaging. I think they wanted to sink the viewer, I think, into the family life of this main character, Jacob, and it was too cliche, too uninteresting. And then when it came to the bait and switch, there was none. There was nothing to keep me interested. This was a long 90-minute movie. I know you guys might agree with me on that.
Good God.
Oof,
On the note, though, real quick, of that family dynamic, it's never really established to begin with. So when it does occur that, we were misled this whole time because Jacob is on all these drugs and he's having false memories, like there's no impact to that. It doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit with everything that has been produced thus far. Go ahead, Hans. Sorry about cutting you off.
that's the moment when he thought that his brother was flirting with his wife because he touched her shoulder, right? Like that was supposed to be the breaking moment where we realize that he's the one that's fucked up and not the brother. But it was so sudden and so out of nowhere and so unexpected that it just ended up looking like he was just angry at his brother for no reason. And he just smashed him against that mirror. And then we had that really awkward just shot of them. So that moment was very confusing to me because it came really out of nowhere. I had a really hard time watching this movie because since it was so slow and nothing would happen and just so bland, I just kept losing interest and just focusing on things that weren't even in the movie at all. So I had a book next to me and I didn't really read the book, but I would just look at the cover. And then when I would go back to the movie, I would have no idea what was going on, even though I was kind of familiar with the story. That moment when he thought that his brother was flirting with his wife or whatever the fuck, his couple, it was so out of nowhere. And the fact that he slammed it against the mirror and then the camera stayed on the mirror showing it how dramatic it was that he broke a mirror with his brother. It just felt like a Hallmark Channel movie to me. Like that moment was so dramatic and so bad that I just didn't even know what I was watching. I thought I was going to watch a horror movie, and it just ended up being a black drama about two brothers that don't like each other, I guess.
It did have that Hallmark style quality to it. It checked off all the numbers. I mean, like LowRes said, I guess the production value was there in some regard. I didn't find it all too engaging or really enveloping, but it was serviceable. But then they rounded off with like all the sparkly, good-looking cast members like Ricky and like Jesse Williams and whatnot, and it had those melodramatic aspects like you had mentioned. And I'm thinking to myself, aren't I supposed to be watching a thriller or a horror movie? What in the hell am I actually... See, Jacob's Ladder, it's not that hard a formula to break. And go back to the original, it's Tim Robbins, I don't know if he's supposed to be a good-looking man, but he has a giant forehead that I could never take my eyes off of when I see him in a movie. So it's not like he's this primped up kind of, again, melodrama, soap opera looking actor like some in this movie. So just the effect it has on you it's so confusing because you never know what this movie really wants to be. So, and because of that, your interest completely just dwindles away probably after the first, 10 minutes?
Oh, easily.
I mean, I found myself during this movie just seeing how many whiskeys and ginger beer I could finish by the end credits.
They don't actually develop the relationship between Michael Ealy and his wife. So whenever that turn happens, like what Hans is saying, it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Even though you know the storyline and what's supposed to happen, what beats it's supposed to hit, you don't ever actually feel like Michael Ealy and this woman are madly in love and he's convinced of this life. Really, it's sort of like he's playing a part in a family drama that just happens to have this element of something kind of psychological going on, but it's so poorly executed at every turn that most of the time when a new thing is happening, I don't even give a shit. I don't give a shit to actually be like, okay, how did we get to this part from here? Because I know they didn't build it up to that. It's just out of nowhere, here's this guy in an alleyway being like, listen, bad things happen. The drugs is bad. Oh no. And then a car's chasing him down an alleyway. And a dude's like, hey man, you need some help? No, I'm totally fine, even though I just got fucking ran over. Don't call the cops or anything. I'm pretty sure I'm being chased by people, but I'm just gonna kind of walk away. All right, I don't give a fuck anymore. Get killed. Get fucking killed. I don't care.
The biggest crime that this movie commits, in my opinion, is that it is consistently boring. You hit the nail on the head by just saying there's no vested interest in any of the plot devices here, any of the characters. I don't think it's a technically like poorly made film, and the performances are not egregiously bad like I was expecting them to be. Hans, I know that you had some gripes about the acting, but it's just like there's nothing interesting going on, and none of the performances are really. They're not made unique. There's no real desire to do something different with those roles, or just
Yes.
have them be a cut above like TV movie standard.
Right. And one thing is, if you try to sink into the movie, even in the opening act, there's just nothing there. None of the characters talk in a distinct manner. Nobody has their own like vernacular. There's nobody fun in the movie that you can cling on to, even for a couple seconds for like levity. It's such a one-dimensional way of trying to tell this story of this in such a gloomy, boring, droning fashion that it just becomes almost like a dream, but in the worst way possible, because you feel like you're asleep watching this movie. You feel like you're being just mumbled to death while you're watching this, because there's long-winded dialogues that don't connect to anything, just between two characters, between Michael Ealy's character, Jacob, who he's always on edge because army, and other person because reasons. And there's never a consistent thread in between those. There's no mystery behind it. It's just the characters in this script almost going through the motion, and none of it is at all engaging. It's just a common thread the only common thread through this movie, the fact that every scene is just as uninteresting as the one before it.
Was there a missed opportunity here to cast Jussie Smollett as the lead in Jacob's Ladder?
You wouldn't if you didn't know that they were two different people. The what's his name, Jesse Williams or whatever, the brother, and they're completely interchangeable. Yeah. They're complete. Whenever I actually read the credit, I was surprised to see that it wasn't that Josie Smollett or Juicy Smollett, however you say his name.
I thought that the whole army thing, they show it on the first scene, I guess. Well, not the first scene, the second scene after the intro, where that guy dies in the stairs for whatever reason. And then you have, a minute of him being in the sand, and then he gets a call from his girl saying that she's pregnant. And I don't remember the army ever being a factor throughout the movie at all, besides the flashback that he has 30 seconds after he talks to his wife about, being in the hospital, cutting someone open. And then, so we're supposed to care about the fact that this guy's a soldier, but we never really see any army related shit. Just an intro of like, hey, this guy is army guy. Care about him being army guy, and that's it.
Well, yeah, that's a good point, because in the original film, everything that's going on is supposed to be taking place in these moments while, Jacob's on the surgery table, right? And he's kind of being torn between the idea of heaven and hell in this purgatory, exploring them both, right? And this, without considering any of that, as soon as he comes out of his first flashback and he's in the surgeon's room and you see him, doing surgery in a regular hospital instead of a mill hospital, my mind is, okay, so why the fuck do I care about what I just saw? Is that just so that they could get funding from Budweiser? Because the next scene after the first scene is him rubbing an ice cold Budweiser turned perfectly sideways so that you could read Budweiser on it. And I'm thinking this.
I'm glad that you found the product placement too. That's the first thing that just screamed in my head. Product placement.
That's the whole funding for the film right there. Because there's nothing in this that if you were to give me a log line of it, that I would say like, all right, yeah, here's $100. Go film something for it. And the fact that they got probably a few million.
I would prefer they bring in the whole chariot of horses for that scene. That at least would have given it. At least would have made it fun. At least would have made it worth it and given the one memorable scene in the movie.
That's the thing that bothers me the most, that they didn't even have fun with it. So you see something like, let's say the Buster Rhymes Halloween, right? Where it's not a great movie, but it's fun. It's funny. You can tell that they were having fun making it, and it's just a dumb movie that's just a let's watch this movie with my friends. I'm gonna have a laugh. This one just felt like, okay, let's get this title. Let's create a story that's kind of similar to the original story, and then just leave it as it is. As that, just a bland, almost story. I just don't understand what the point of making this was, or who the target audience is. I remember LowRes mentioning that this could be one of those times when they're running out of time for the rights, so they have to do something to keep them. And it really felt like it was something like that because I just don't understand what the reason for this to exist at all is even.
It's barely a cut above that Fantastic Four movies from the 90s. It's literally the least amount of correlation to the original film, and then let's just do whatever the fuck we can think of while we have like 10 minutes.
Roger Corman's Jacob's Ladder.
But you know what's you see that would be something worthwhile in comparison to this. The funny thing about this one, yeah, like you were kind of mentioning, is that there's no fun element to it, and that's fine if you're going to go the other way. Kind of like how David Cronenberg will go very almost ominous and pessimistic with his movies, but even he understands in all of his work. And I mean, it's a gross comparison between Cronenberg and the douche nozzle that directed this movie, but it's not even going all the way with that in terms of it's exploiting that kind of ominous pessimism, excuse me, to an entertaining level. It's like no. We're gonna just pull the punches and just be gloomy. Have nothing to cling on to emotionally. No extreme imagery. Like there's
Nothing.
there's not even any good violence in this. No guts. Anything like that. At least Cronenberg knew that. I mean, again, he was a grade, but if you're gonna go in that real moody, just depressing territory, you might as well go all the way with it. But this does nothing.
I think maybe we should probably dig into this movie in comparison to the last and what the differences are in the story. Because the ending, to my knowledge anyway, is completely different from that of the original film from 1990 and the implications of the twist. Where, Jerry, you had said, you had started to delve into it some, but it's about Jacob being on the table, dying, passing away, having fragments of his life flash in front of him, manipulated memories. And here we have kind of like a Spider-Man the Lizard plot twist where the mad scientist is working on a formula to cure bad memories. And then he dies a hero. He gets shot in the chest to save his brother.
Hold on. That scene with the gunshot and then the jump through the window, that shit was Troll 2 level of just awful. Like it didn't even look like they tried to make it look like an action scene or anything that resembled any type of acting. It was just so bad, the shooting, and then he pushes the guy through the window in a very dramatic soap opera way. And I was just, what the fuck am I? This is how you decide to end your movie.
That was the shot for the trailer.
Was that? I didn't see the trailer, but
that was the big moment.
Goddamn,
that's where they poured the budget into that CGI breakaway glass.
You actually articulate that really well. As I felt like I was being trolled. Like I sat through so much of this movie, and then I got to that part, and I was thinking, the writers are laughing at me right now for having made it this far and to see this scene, and it's played in slow motion too. This sidestep from Michael Ealy to jump in front of a bullet. That I can't help but to think that nobody gave a fuck what they were making. Nobody. None of the actors, none of the crew. Whoever did like cinematography and editing, props to them because they're the only people that gave a fuck. But even up to their most dramatic moment, I cannot think a single person gave a shit about what they were making.
I think that's accurate. And if you look at what I had as my worst film of 2018, How It Ends, which was a direct-to-Netflix car commercial, essentially, starring Forrest Whitaker. Same guy directed it. that was fairly well shot. That had good visual effects to it. It was completely dry of anything remotely relating to substance, though. So clearly, the director has
Now,
an
wait, can
eye.
I ask a question?
Sure.
I think I had seen that one. Can you tell me, was that the one where like the ending is they're driving away from like a big like storm or big cataclysmic event, and that's just the ending?
I can't recall specifically, but I believe so. It's about Forrest Whitaker and his son-in-law are trying to make it home to his daughter, and some guy like the neighbor is watching over her or whatever. And you don't get to see the neighbor at any point. He just shows up in the last like eighth of the movie and starts acting like an asshole to the lead, tries to kill the lead. The lead then kills this guy who we're supposed to like be like, oh, he's a villain of some sort. And then, yeah, there's some weird, it's like almost like a fake Mad Max end of the world type shit that's happening. And he's driving a really nice car, and they have shots of the car just frequently throughout the film, close-ups on the wheels, the tires, the
Yeah, I think I saw this one.
bumper.
Yeah, that one. Oh, that was terrible. Oh my god.
Painful.
I guess my problem is just fucking make the movie for someone. You know, if you know you're making a shitty movie, fucking go all in and make it shitty enough so that it's enjoyable to watch. This thing, like, I can't think of who the audience is for this. Like, who's excited about watching this, or who watches the movie and goes, you know what, this feels like something I should rewatch to, maybe get all the themes or things that I missed, or I don't understand. It takes itself way too seriously, but it's not smart enough at
The
all
audience is,
to be a serious
it's
movie.
people who go to the Red Box and go, Jacob's Ladder, that sounds familiar. Maybe, oh, this looks new though. I think I'll get this. It's only $1. And then they go home and then they see that Budweiser scene you were talking about and go, oh, I think I want a Budweiser. Yeah, I'm going to go get a beer.
Well, and
That's the audience.
there's so many moments early on that are completely immersion breaking too. Like, if you were at all immersed in the story, which you're probably not, when you start seeing, it's established that this was Iraq Afghanistan war. These guys are Iraq
Big
Afghanistan
Middle
vets.
Eastern
Yeah,
war.
yeah, something like that, something in the MENA. Yet every single veteran that you see is wearing a classic olive drab military jacket, right? Which I don't know why you would have one of those if you just spent your entire career in 2018 in fucking Afghanistan. I'm not sure why they're giving you green ABUs at all. That shows a guy in a green camouflage jacket walking around. And I'm thinking, this is just legitimate, like a Rambo callback. Like, remember Rambo wears that green jacket? That's how you know he's in the military. So we're going to do that too. That's what the fuck war were these guys in, where half of it was in the desert and the other half was in the forest. And I know it's a small detail, but it's those types of details that I think validate the criticism that these guys don't give a shit. And they didn't think about what they were doing as they were doing it. I think they had plot points that they wanted to hit. They want Michael Ealy to be in love. They want his brother to be a homeless guy, which that was fucking blew me away. So what made this dude homeless? His PTSD? Was that it? Because they don't establish that at all.
Drain my bank account.
They have him in the subway. Remember, in the first one, that subway is like the river Styx, essentially. It's super disgusting. The people in there are a mixture of what you perceive to be demons and angels, right? He has to be kind of saved from that area at one point. All hella clues all over the place that this might be a train to hell or something. And in this one, it's just a dark subway and homeless people live in there. Like, it's not eerie, it's not creepy. It's somehow you end up down there as soon as you get PTSD or something. I don't follow.
And then he sees his brother, and his brother's like, "Hey, what's up?" Like, he's perfectly fine. Like, he's not even dirty. He's just chilling there.
He has to like pick him up and carry him too. He's like, "Oh shit, you've been laying down right here for, I guess, the last 2 years since the last time I saw you. I don't have anything to go on besides what I'm seeing right now. I have to carry you. You're too weak to walk." It's like the dude, he's buff. Jesse Williams is like fucking buff and shit. Like, visually in good shape the whole time.
I saw that. That like almost kind of pissed me off, because there's a scene later in the movie where they take him home and he's having some kind of episode, and Michael Ealy's character says like, "Oh, like put him in the tub. We're gonna like make sure he's okay." And they pull off his shirt, and you see this fucking guy with his like 6-pack, and I'm like,
The
Jesus
close-up on the
Christ,
abs.
you can't. It's like you can't even like.
They're
it's
pouring
very
water on his
easy.
chiseled body.
Oh my!
He was just
the most in shape crackhead
he
ever.
was just shoveling down a piece of bread as if he'd never eaten food in his life, and then 10 seconds later, you see that he's on an all-protein fucking 6,000 calorie diet.
I mean, there's very few looks to get right easier than like lanky, fat but skinny druggy. Like that's a very easy look to get down, and for whatever reason, they couldn't sacrifice that.
Also, when it comes to that costume, and just because I've worked in a couple of things where the director didn't give a fuck, it really just seems like they just sent an intern to an army surplus store, and they were like, just get something that looks like an army uniform. It doesn't matter, and we'll figure it out, and
No,
that's it.
2 jackets equals homeless.
You know what that seems like to me? It's like if you guys have ever watched kind of like a freshman college film class, like thesis film, it's like the obvious thing where they need to show that it's an army guy, but they can't tell you. So let's have this guy casually fucking walk around in his combat clothes on a nice sunny day, so he like, oh my god, the plausibility is ridiculous.
As you do.
It's no. These people are nothing but their uniforms. They walk around and they do that for life, and then they fucking become PTSD homeless people in the end.
So I was looking into the company that put this movie out, and they have released several films, actually almost like 10 films a year. Yeah.
Damn.
So they're pretty well off. Vertical Entertainment. And they've done such hits as Rob Reiner's LBJ film with Woody Harrelson, Billionaire Boys Club with Kevin Spacey, that wound up getting dispatched direct to Redbox, and Gotti, the critical stunner, Gotti. And it makes me wonder if this is just like a shell company to front drugs or do money laundering, or there's got to be something else going on here if this is the quality of feature that they're bringing out 10 times a year. Because
Go ahead.
There are other films on this list that I've seen before, just like listed at the Redbox that you don't see otherwise. They're like tulpas, basically.
It's got to be like an Uwe Boll situation where whoever is producing this content, they know some trick about the business. There's a tax write-off that you get if you cast Michael Ealy and you show his eyes for 30 seconds or more. Like there's something somewhere that allows them to make this happen like that. It's either that or, like you're saying to his last film, these guys know that if they can get a product placement, they can get some money, and some of that money they can keep, the rest of it they can use to make a film. And it's like bottom of the barrel filmmaking, and that comes from us.
Yeah.
And it like I said, I mean, we're ragging on the talent here of Jacob's Ladder, but they also had a Mel Gibson Sean Penn film that again was buried for quite some time, and then just suddenly released quietly this year, called The Professor and the Madman.
I tried to watch that one. I couldn't sit through it. I made it about 45 minutes in, and I just couldn't do it. It's about some fucking English guy that just writes in calligraphy. Like Mel Gibson is good in it, but I just couldn't. It was the same as this movie, but it was at least better because they had better actors. I mean, Sean Penn, say what you will about him, he can knock out a good performance, and Mel Gibson is almost always great, but it just had that same vacuous, empty blandness where you think about 20 minutes into the movie, you're like, why am I actually watching this? Yeah, why am I watching this?
It's probably not a good sign when the director takes a nom de plume when it comes to the release of the film. And I had also read that there was some kind of legal issue with Mel Gibson regarding this movie. Do you guys know anything about that?
I might have heard something about it when I had rented it originally.
What's a
nom de plume is a pen name. It's a fake name. It's LowRes.
Hans.
Hans.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
you.
got it.
What are you, simpleton? Fuck, not like I just googled that right now.
Non de plume. I wouldn't even know how to spell that, so
Well,
good for you,
apparently the guy
I
that
guess.
directs these movies, Jacob's Ladder, is proud of his work because he's had his name on the last two projects. So
I'm just reading here. Gibson and his production company, Icon Productions, sued the production company Voltage Pictures, which I guess was where the money came from for this movie, The Professor and the Madman, because they wanted Final Cut privileges over it. And Gibson didn't get them, so he tried to block the release of the movie. So this is an old movie.
I don't blame him then, because he's pretty smart when it comes to storytelling in movies. So, and now he's in that fucking turd fest. So yeah, maybe Michael Ealy should do the same thing for this fucking movie. Jesus.
How are we gonna fill an hour talking about these pieces of shit? Like I think I ran out of things to say about it
hold
already.
on,
I'm just
Hans.
like
the movie
it
ends
was-
on this very ominous note where he's standing in a cornfield looking out to the sunset. What do you guys think
Yep.
that
It means fucking nothing. It's horse shit. That's what it is. They do a scene earlier of like him and his brother or whatever when they were kids walking through this cornfield, and then they end it with it. Now, just by that point, I was just so exhausted with the amount of nothingness in this movie. I was like, get the fuck out of here with that. That means nothing. It's one of those stupid, pointless, enigmatic shots that never amount to anything. I bet if you even asked the director, like, oh, what does this scene mean? He'd fucking puke on himself. We had the budget for a cornfield, so we put it in.
It's setting up the sequel when he goes back in time to 1850 and wakes up outside of a cornfield.
So so for sure that last shot is like supposed to be okay, he died and went to heaven, right? Ultimately he was a good guy regardless of everything that happened, right? I get that because it's like day one cinematography or filmography. And there's a bunch of scenes like that are like, okay, this is this guy's like first or second year out of film school. Whenever Jacob is having sex with Jezebel, who I guess only appears in the last few minutes of the movie solely to have a scene of Michael Ealy naked speed fucking her, which I don't understand that at all. And she's like on top of him riding him, and then her demon wings pop out. And it's like, okay, well, this movie isn't playing on heaven and hell at all. So is this a hallucination from the drug that he
You know what that felt
on,
like? That
he's-
felt like they were kind of leaning into the audience of fat white girls with black boyfriends who were really obsessed with their MySpace profiles back in 2005 and using glitter gifs all over their page.
You know what?
doesn't sound wrong.
This
That doesn't
reminds
sound
me of a
wrong.
much better
There's-
sex scene in this vein. You guys ever see Pet Cemetery 2 where the dad pictures he's fucking his wife and she turns into a dog on top of him?
Is that directed by Adam from Your Movie Sucks?
It gave me those vibes, but
That's the one of the.
It
things,
reminded me of what's that alien movie? Splice, is it? When Adrian Brody fucks an alien and then it does the exact same thing. It looks like the same shot, just shittier.
one of the things that usually it would frustrate me about a remake that I really wish they would have just done is mimicking shots from the original. So the bathtub scene, you can. I mean, that's I could go back to that a million times. I think most people will agree. In the original, the whole bathtub scene is unsettling and partially terrifying because you're already immersed in the film, immersed in the storyline, and Jacob fucking hates whatever's going on. You're like, dude, you have 111 temperature. She's trying to save you, but he's screaming like, "You're killing me! You're killing me!" And you could play with the idea that maybe that's him actually in his own mind feeling the surgery going on while he's on the table, right? He can feel the surgeons digging around for whatever might have caused its guts to get ripped out and all that stuff. But and it's scary, it's terrifying, right? But in this, it's just like they throw Jesse Williams in the bath for reasons. It's never explained what the bath is supposed to do for him. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, these two dudes are just like cuddling on the ground. And then when it's over, th So it doesn't use the same energy to get this shot across, this downward angle of somebody resisting being kind of like baptized in a lot of ways, right? And then what I think one of the most unsettling scenes in any movie, personally, and it carries through into Silent Hill, which is entirely inspired by Jacob's Ladder, not entirely, but mostly inspired by Jacob's Ladder, is when he's being taken down the hallway in effectively hell to the hell surgeon, right? And they're pushing him on that meat cart, and the wheel, the angle from down on the ground on the wheel, it doesn't face forward, right? It's fucked up, turns all sideways, and it's creaky. And the whole time you can see that this isn't a clean hospital. This is very clear like a destroyed, fucked up building. There's crackheads all over the place, and he's about to get surgery in there. That's unsettling and crazy. Instead, 2019's Jacob Ladder takes black-eyed old lady and pushes him down a completely colorless gray
Oh, I really
cement.
hated those demons that were in this movie that were clearly done with that one effect in Adobe After Effects that gives you the demon face. That was so popular in those really shitty found footage movies that went like direct to DVD in 2008 when Paranormal Activity
They're like
came
Grave
out.
Encounters.
Where it's just like, ooh, the hollow eyes and the big mouth, great.
Shaky demons. Just
Now
shaky
hold on a
face.
second.
Oh,
The original
scary.
Jacob's Ladder did do that, but I think
Even that.
I mean, they did that back in 1990, way before that became commonplace with music videos like for what, Stained or Disturbed or Marilyn Manson or whoever was utilizing that tool, and then the horror films copied that. And one of the strongest points of that original Jacob's Ladder is the look of the demons and how they're not overly shown. It's really just like you get maybe a second at most of a creepy looking white face, and then they move on. And it's not quite subliminal like how The Exorcist was, but they employ the terror you're supposed to feel from this iconography very well. And this movie does not even come close to that. It's embarrassing. The woman with the giant demon wings flapping around, and the shaking of the heads, and the clearly very poorly thought out effects that were done within probably seconds. Awful.
Now, this would all be forgivable, and it would be a positive if this was all done to the extent of like you could laugh at it, but it really isn't. This is a special kind of bad movie where it's just bad. It's not entertaining at all, and even the bad elements, with the exception of, I don't know, like Hans was saying, with maybe the push through the window, like, but even then, that's a stretch of like so bad it's good territory. This is just this is the worst kind of movie you can make, where it's just boring. It's not entertaining because of how awful it is, and there's plenty of those out there. I'm sure we could find 50 that we could talk about after this episode that would be way more entertaining to talk about. This is just that unique kind of movie that's like, hey, do you like good movies? No. Well, do you like really bad movies? No, fuck you. Like, bad, bland, boring movie that just desensitizes you to every frame of it with, it's blandness. There you go. There's my rant.
What's the rating? Is it PG-13 even?
I don't even think they rate movies anymore. Do they do that?
Am I showing my age?
1997? Come on, Hans.
Yeah, they showed that scene early on when the surgery scene, right? And I think that's about as graphic as it gets. That's another thing that pissed me off is, so these guys are supposed to be on this drug that fucks them up, and what it does to them is give them foam mouth and make them fall on ground. Whatever this drug does, yeah, I'm sure the hallucinations are supposed to be part of it. I think they loosely explain it in the mad science lab standoff scene. I don't remember much of the dialogue from it, but I really feel like what they showed us was that this drug makes you twitch and foam at the mouth. And like we were saying about the low frame rate head shaking, it plays differently in the original Jacob's Ladder because he witnesses it, right? It's not something that happens to him. He's going down this hallway, he looks over, there's a dude with no legs on a cart, a bag over his head, but he's completely like buff, yoked as hell, and this low frame rate head shaking thing is going on, sort of giving you the idea that this person is potentially tormented by some type of inner mental demon, right? Like that's what you're seeing. Somebody trapped in hell being tormented by their own thoughts. Instead, they use it so poorly. He looks up at the mirror, and the head shaking, I guess, gives the viewer the idea that, okay, now we're supposed to know that he's aware that he's him and not his brother that he's thought the whole time, or something. And even the broken mirror, for a fucking film cliche, they fuck up the broken mirror scene. So he just looks at it, and it's like, yeah, that's your reflection. You're different than you think you are. Yeah, that's you. And they do it real quick, but it's so fucking poorly executed. Again, the movie isn't so good it's bad. It's just so bad it's infuriating.
Can we go on a slight tangent further about this? The stupid low frame rate head twitch thing. Now, has there been a cliche in horror or thriller movies that apparently has lived on that long? Like that became a thing, like you guys were saying. You could even reference the original Jacob's Ladder from 1990, and it's 2020 almost, and they're still using that, thinking, "Whoo, it's really gonna fuck with people." Like, has there ever been a gag or gimmick in like genre films that has almost never worked but still been employed that long?
I couldn't tell you of a time. I think it could still be effective to use that same camera trick with, I think, walking, because I think sometimes having something skinny that walks in broken frames like that can be fairly unsettling, but it's not done the way it used to be done before when everything was on film. It's digital, so the motion doesn't look like it was like originally one speed, and then through the frame rate it can't catch it all, or is catching too much. Instead, it's just making one part of the frame faster than the rest of it. It looks cartoony and shitty in every film that it's done.
Do you think that they're even shooting at 4 frames per second at that point,
No,
or do you think they're
not.
just adding a filter over it?
Yeah, I think they're just speeding up whatever filter they have in, obviously, Adobe After Effects, which is this whole film is edited in 2015's Adobe After Effects. They're speeding up that one part, and so it's actually probably shot at 24 frames per second.
You know what I would like to see? Let's bring back an older cliche, because I'm sick of this like head thing and the twitching. It's never worked for me. If they're gonna do this, why not go all the way and just go back to like 1959 House on a Haunted Hill? Put somebody on a fucking skateboard with their arms out and push them across the set.
Yep.
See that?
That would be great.
Well, aren't they coming out with a new Conjuring related movie where the villain is this creaky man or something like that, and the whole gimmick is that he walks like that?
So the funny thing about that, I think that one is the Crooked Man. And
yeah, that
it's like some British folk tale, I believe. And no, the one credit I'll give that, because like the Conjuring movies are really tricky for me. On one hand, I love James Wan as a director, and I think he's very talented. But I think he appeals to an extraordinarily mainstream like idea of horror sometimes that like I waver about. But the cool thing was, in the second Conjuring movie, I believe he introduces that character, and it was done practically. Like they had this very gangly, almost sickly actor who could do the movements organically, and it was all real.
It's the Spanish guy that played that Mama character and plays pretty much every character that the guy from
He was in it.
the guy from Hellboy doesn't play. You know, the guy that plays Abe Sapien is either him or that creepy Spanish guy that get those roles now.
So at least in that case, it was real, and it was done practically and with some actual discipline. But I don't know how many more movies I can see of like Jump Cut Man is at it again.
But that was but that was James Wan though, who's directing this Crooked Man movie, because that's not a guarantee that they're going to use that same guy or that same technique in the new film.
I can
Everything that they've done, like they did that. Llorona movie? Did any of you watch that?
I did not watch La
The
Llorona.
Curse of the Curse of La Llorona, that was such a piece of shit. And also The Nun. All of these movies are kind of related to The Conjuring a little bit in that same universe. They've all been shit because they don't have the actual people that make those Conjuring movies involved into making this one. So that's why I'm a little bit worried about this character because, the character is a British character that was introduced in the second one where they told the story of that family that had that poltergeist in their house. So that makes sense. But if the whole gimmick of the character is that he's like talks like that or does that, I just don't like. Who cares? And it seems like at least the non movie, I don't know if you guys saw it, but that non character never touched anyone, never did anything more than just being a spooky face in the dark. And then La Llorona, like that's not even like it doesn't even qualify as a horror movie to me. Let's take advantage of how many Latino people are who might recognize this name and just relate it a little bit to The Conjuring so that people recognize that name and go see it because it's just trash. So I guess that's the part when I'm like, I don't know if I want to see an entire movie where the villain is just a guy that wears a purple suit and walks funny.
Joker?
With the top hat. Wait, so are you telling me you want a Jacob's Ladder expanded universe? Or
Well, it's actually... I did read that Tim Robbins was supposed to do a cameo in this film.
Jesus.
But I guess his schedule, or he was too busy. He was supposed to play a handyman, and Jacob in this movie is supposed to go, "Oh, hey, do you need a ladder?" And then he goes, "No, actually, I got a ladder of my own."
Jesus Christ.
I'm so glad that didn't happen.
You're
This
kidding.
movie is already so fucking terrible. If that would have happened like 10 minutes in, I'd have canceled this.
Oh wait,
honestly,
honestly, hold on. I don't even know if that was a joke. Were you serious when you said that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard it from a friend or something.
No, I believe it.
I don't even know what to think.
Because this is how bad the film is. Okay, so Jacob's house gets broken into, right? And he fights off these fucking guys. He's a badass, fights them off. And then he apprehends one and puts him in the trunk and drives him to the police station. To what? Tell the cops that you just fucking kidnapped the guy? Doesn't matter if they committed a crime, dude. You fucking kidnap them and drive them to the police station. Then he goes, I know what I'll do. I'll pull him out of the trunk before I go get the cops. Oh, shoot, it's empty. Guess I'm leaving. You pull up to a fucking police station with a kidnapped guy, and your idea was, I'll just pull him out the trunk. The cops won't think nothing of it. No big deal. Like, who the fuck wrote this?
Yeah.
I believe it was a couple.
Good God.
Were they going through
So-
some rough shit when they wrote this?
It was just some
They hated
cocking,
each other.
just some cucking going on there. The brother.
Well, oh, dude.
Yeah, this Jacob is
brother
cucked
cuckery,
way
yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Whew.
God
You
damn
thought it was
dude.
bad in the original one where Elizabeth Pena, who died of alcoholism at a young age,
Shut up.
wound up dancing with some man at a house party.
Oh, the
No, no, no,
tentacle
no, no.
fucker, the tentacle guy. Remember she danced with him. It's super sexual, and it's again, it's playing on the concept of flirting with heaven and hell, right? She's supposed to be the enticing hell demon that, like, hey, come to hell. You're gonna go to hell. This is a good place, right? And you see her essentially fucking a demon right in front of him, and nobody else cares, right? This is a shitty place to be. Getting cucked sucks. In this film, it's like, oh, darn, he got cucked. Well, okay, well, he didn't really get cucked. He just feels like he could have cucked his brother or something. Like, that's, in his imagination, he cucked his brother, but it never happened.
And is there anything that actually sets up the twist that takes place later on where it's just like, oh, we flipped lives? Is there any remote like hint of
The
that
only
being
thing, there's
not
one hint, I believe, and it's when he walks by the hooker and she says, like, hey, babe, like, where you going?
Right,
That's
yes.
the only connection. But
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, all right, that's a,
Is that when he goes like, "Do I know you"?
yeah.
Is that the scene?
Like, but, and okay,
That's how you would respond to a
And I
crackhead,
get-
too. Well, do I
and
know
I guess
you?
that's fine.
Yeah, hey, are we friends? Have we interacted before? Is this a thing that happens often?
Yeah, didn't I see you at that class at Home Depot one time? You know, the ones they have for free? So, have you learned to plumb yet? Anyway, no, yeah, like, that's the one connection I think they had. And, I mean, is that is that a good like line of connection right there? Because
No.
when the twist happens, I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And it's like, oh, we had this like one little insert scene where he says hi to a hooker that like you don't see until he fucks her later, and it's like, okay, like then that's just lazy.
Right. A
damn
crackhead
writing.
hooker acts like a crackhead hooker.
Yeah. No, you know what happened, I think, is when this very troubled couple that should probably go to counseling was writing this script, they must have inserted that connection on the last possible day that they were working on their last draft, because again, there's no other kind of breadcrumb trail to this ending, which a lot of these kinds of movies will do.
There is one thing that it's very noticeable when he turns or when he realizes that he's fucked up. His jacket and his face are slightly dirty when he shows up. And because his face is slightly dirty, you're like, oh my God, he's unhinged. And that's it.
And you know what? It's dirty in the way that you would be dirty if you were doing like an Oliver Twist school play. Like, it's very obviously thumbprints and fingerprints. Like, we'll smear a little bit of dirt on you, and now his hair. He's got a perfectly lined up haircut and a perfectly lined up early morning cut, like shave. The dude's been to a barber yesterday. You know what I mean? But no. He's got some grease on his cheek. He's a real mechanic.
Oh, gee. Yeah, so suffice to say, I think they might have inserted those things at the very last moment because they realized they had no connection to the twist ending. Those were probably subsequent shots that they put in after the fact.
Well, the thing about the first Jacob's Ladder is it really does show you exactly what the ending's going to be early on, right? Early on, this dude's riding the train, looks up, and the little sign on the inside of the train says, "Welcome to hell," right? This is what the movie is about. This dude going to hell, okay? You eventually find out that he's going to hell because he was killed because he was being experimented on by the government. 2019's Jacob Ladder is about it's about something like somebody wanted it to have some type of thing going on. It never happens, whatever that thing is supposed to be. Bunch of other stuff happens in whatever order, in probably the wrong order. I really think we should have seen the crackhead prostitute more first. Mm-hmm. Seeing her towards the end of the movie for a second, and then a couple of minutes later, he's like banging her. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, did I fucking miss the scene where they set up that he actually is with this person? Or does he just remember now that he's with that person? Because for Jacob, in Jacob's Ladder, he was confused. He's like, wait a minute, I was just fucking this Latino girl. Now I'm back here with my whole family? That must have been something made up. Must have been a dream. I'll ignore it. And then he'd wake up with Jezebel, and then he'd be like, wait a minute, what about my family? No, that must have been a fucking dream. Like, he can't convince himself that one of those things is a reality. In this one, Michael Ealy just is like, okay, sure, yes, I fucked this crackhead.
It's like,
motives unclear.
Do you guys remember the scene in the subway at the beginning? I can't remember exactly what happened, but I believe he's talking to someone, or someone's talking to him, or whatever. And then someone with a hood on pushes this guy into the tracks, and then the train goes by, and he's just like, what? Like, the whole reaction was just, what? And it was just about the cops not taking him seriously or whatever, but it was just like, that's the scene where we're supposed to feel emotionally attached to the movie or feel for this character, and it's just so laughably bad how they did it that it's just, there's nothing redeeming about it at all.
And it's played as a jump scare too.
Yeah.
Somebody getting pushed in front of a train, which is already like horrifying, you could just show, is instead played as a fucking jump scare. Why? What's the point of that? And
again, listen, going all the way with the nature of the story is another thing, because you know what scene just came to mind when I was thinking about, oh yeah, this doofus was pushed under the train. If you're gonna do it, and I don't even love this movie, I hardly like this movie, but you know what movie did that way better? Hostel, 14 fucking years ago, when I think she's Japanese, she throws herself under the train, and you see that shit pop, and it's like, you know, we're a lot more desensitized now in 2019, so you might as well put that in and maximize the effect. But nope, just...
But they couldn't afford it. You would see a little CGI splat on the corner of the screen if they were actually going to do that and commit to it.
You would see Rob Zombie blood. You know what I mean? That is all digital, like on Devil's Rejects when they shoot people and it's just a digital gunshot. Just
who is that guy, by the way? The redhead with the mustache, that Dom Hale Gleason ripoff. I've seen him in so many things, and he's always in like 50 Cent movies.
I have no idea. There's like, it's one of those things where the source material is rich with iconography and ideas for you to explore. I complained in my own episode about that I didn't notice that the books that were on Tim Robbins' desk were in direct relation to the entire story, right? You could learn something about whether or not he's in heaven or hell simply by looking at the clues around him. In this film, they take nothing from it, and then they try to do something similar, and every time it fails, right as soon as you realize that, okay, I know what they're trying to do, it goes to the next scene, and then it's a whole new attempt at something unrelated. So you can't even follow along with the film. It feels like scenes are in the wrong order, and if you're waiting for something from Jacob's Ladder to happen, it probably happened earlier or at the end or in the middle. That's what you're thinking the whole time. Like, maybe it'll happen soon, and it never fucking
In the original Jacob's Ladder, there's symbolism. In this new Jacob's Ladder, there's dirty face. That's how they tie everything together.
Black eye old lady.
So, would you fellows recommend
No.
Jacob's Ladder 2019?
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah, if you're trying to put on a movie that will give you a good 5 or 6 minutes of something on TV before you go to have sex with your significant other, sure. Absolutely.
I'd recommend
Really,
this. Oh, go ahead, Hans.
Because I would watch the opening scene with the crackhead in the stairs and just be like, I don't even want to fuck anymore. I'm very upset. Like, this just really pissed my fucking boner off. I don't want anything anymore. That scene was so bad. You know, when it shows a little bit of rope of someone choking it, which I'm assuming was just symbolism for the crackhead dying because of a drug or whatever. But it was just so bad. I don't know. I couldn't find anything that I liked about this thing, and I keep thinking of just scenes that just didn't make any sense or that I just don't see the point of them. I'm assuming that intro was just to show that the drug was bad.
Bad, yeah. And the rest of the movie does a perfectly good job of explaining that whatever made Jacob be this dumb is not cool. But no, we need that extra scene.
I would recommend this film. Oh wait, I would just recommend this film if you, well, in the sense of if you have a completely full bottle of alcohol of your choice, whether it's vodka, whiskey, maybe gin or bourbon, whatever it may be, and you don't think you have the balls to put that whole thing down during the duration of this movie, I would recommend you watch this movie and wow yourself.
What I was going to ask was, because this movie got a deal where it goes direct to Dish TV and they're promoting Sling and all that, that's a new thing.
Oof.
So it's got a pretty decent setup, pretty good chance of having some eyes land on it. Is there an opportunity that we wind up seeing a Jacob's Ladder 2?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And where does it go from there?
It'll be a woman, because that's different, and she'll not be in the military. She'll be like a cop, and she'll be sad because her partner got killed. But it'll turn out that she's the one that got killed. That's Jacob's Ladder 2. I'm telling you right now.
A Latina cop who stars on Chicago PD.
Yeah. What was that show with Dennis Leary for a long time, where his friend like died in 9/11?
Rescue Me.
Rescue Me?
Oh,
Yeah, it'll be Rescue Me, but really Dennis Leary is the one that died in 9/11.
Dennis Lear playing a Latino woman.
Name Jacob.
Jacob will be the last name. That's how they'll get away with it.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. She'll be Jackie Jacob.
Jackie
I was gonna
Jacob.
say I was gonna say Consuela Jacob.
And you know that Jacob is a reveal for the end of the movie too. It's her ID or something after she dies. She dies, and then her purse just breaks open, and her ID is there. And then the last shot is, Jackie Jacob. And
Yeah, you're wondering the whole time, how does
Credits.
this make sense? How does this link up to that first one? Where's the connection with the name? And then, boom. It's like that Joker card at the end of Batman Begins.
yeah, there it is.
I'm picturing all this with Dennis Leary as this Latina character, and now I want to see this. I want to see this movie.
If you're gonna give him chola makeup so that he finally has lips.
Not that fucking bird mouth of his.
I'll say this: if the first Jacob's Ladder inspired a bunch of people to do a bunch of stuff in the thriller, horror, psychological horror like genres, right, from video games, books, movies, TV shows, this film is the opposite of it. This was somebody who decided, fuck creativity. I just finished watching 1990s Jacob's Ladder. Fuck creativity. Fuck movies. I'm making my own. And that's like the biggest compliment I could give it, is at least this person said, fuck trying to be creative.
I don't know. I think he's an airhead, and I think he thought to himself, I like movies.
That this I like movies.
What's the guy's name? Now that we've given him so many props about this and his previous movie.
What's
Who?
it? Michael Enos or
The actor?
No,
or
the director.
no the
Oh,
director.
David Rosenthal.
David Rosenthal, yes.
Oh, okay.
From such popular films as Janie Jones and See This Movie.
Wait, for real?
Uh-huh. 100%.
Oh,
Dude
boy.
has like 6 filmography credits.
I don't know. That
The
name
very first one is a Seth Meyers film.
that
So
that name
no.
sounded
Oh,
very
oof.
Jewy. I thought you were making it up. It does sound like a pen name. Oh, sorry. What is it? Put the pen. What did you say? What was it?
Coup de grace.
Isn't that the French
Putin,
president?
uh,
Well, I cannot stress this more. Yesterday, when I was watching this, it felt like a big waste of 90 minutes. So I'm glad we managed to get an hour and change out of that film, which, Hans, I know you acknowledged disbelief over halfway through, and everybody just glossed over that, appropriately so. Is there anything else that can be said about Jacob's Ladder? And would it benefit a name change? Would that improve the 6% on Rotten Tomatoes if people maybe had just like the slightest shift in perception of this movie? Because obviously, as a remake, it is up against terrible odds of trying to match that original, and clearly it failed. But if it was a proper sequel, would it be spared at least a little bit? The same way that Lost Boys 2 was spared a little bit.
if it had just, I don't know if 2 would have done it, right?
Mm.
If they had taken out the Jacob's Ladder name entirely, I think this movie could have been a tad bit better, because you go in expecting something that is going to explore this very complex concept that is done very well in the original Jacob's Ladder. I think that as a remake, this is about as good, or is about as similar as Jurassic Park with cats, where it's still called Jurassic Park 2 even, but it's all cats, and all this, everything else happens, it's just cats instead. It would be closer to a remake or a sequel than this film is. It's so fucking bad. I will say, what to one credit is I watched this movie at 2 times speed because I couldn't give a fuck, and it's actually hilarious. The sex scene is actually hilarious whenever Michael Ealy and the crackhead are sleeping together, because his what's already sped up sex scene is so fucking funny at cartoon speed. I would say watch that 4 or 5 times over. Don't watch the rest.
It's just Benny Hill like sex scene.
Yep.
I think if this movie didn't have that title, it would still be a piece of shit, but I don't think it would be seen as bad as it
We
actually
wouldn't have
is.
watched it. Yeah.
No, oh no, 100%. And that's one thing that bothers me a lot about when they remake movies direct to video and they just don't make it anything related to the original movie, just name it something else. This really felt like a Jennifer Lopez action movie to me. You know, when they're really trying to make you
Angel
care.
eyes.
They're really trying to make you care, but it's just not bad enough for you to enjoy it and not good at all. So it's just bland, and the fact that they added, you know, an iconic movie title like that, it just made it even worse. Without even starting the movie, we were already judging it. So yeah, I feel like if it didn't have that title, it maybe, you know, would have flown over the radar, which is probably the best thing that would have happened to this movie.
Is this the most egregious example of a film using the previous, using a property to bolster something that's almost entirely unrelated, or at least butchers the central concept of that original?
To be fair, I'm going to say no to that because I think, and I wish I could say an example that comes to mind. I think there have been much worse bastardizations of classic IPs or films or
Is The
whatnot.
Shining
Whereas this one,
1997 worse than this?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. But this one it's just so pedestrian and bland that it's like, all right, it sucks, it's unwatchable, it's boring, but it's not an absolute like kick in the balls to the legacy of the original film, and doesn't try to do much with the with the name of the original. It doesn't try to force down like any shitty agendas or try to fix things from the original that might be found as distasteful today. It doesn't do anything like that. So I would say it's not the worst in that regard. But I was going to say, if you want to watch a movie that is an inferior remake of a classic genre film, but it's still an immensely entertaining time, go watch 2006's The Wicker Man starring Nicolas Cage. That is the prime example of when you remake a classic movie. It's no good, but it's so great because of how not good it is. And that's the vein which this movie should have gone in. But unfortunately, Michael Ealy is no Nicolas Cage.
It's a deviation from the original. Oh, is he talking? Oh no, I fucked up all the audio. I can't tell because of Skype. Fuck. My bad.
You're good.
Uh,
I think
it's a
thinking back to just
Wow, Hans. Damn.
Yeah, I made it worse.
That was very impolite, Hans.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's a deviation from the original in the same way that the Tom Cruise Mummy is a deviation from the original, right? If it takes away all the stuff that you liked about the original and replaces it with a face that I guess is better to look at than the original, and that's about
Wouldn't
it.
a more apt comparison be that this is more like Bad Lieutenant and Bad Lieutenant Port of Call, New Orleans?
That's not bad.
Wasn't that just fun though? Because it was so terrible. That New Orleans.
Why do you
one?
assume it's terrible? That was Werner Herzog of Star Wars.
That's great, but it still had Nicolas Cage hamming it up. So that one at least was fun. The one that I was thinking about was when I was living in Canada, I got fooled into buying Night of the Living Dead 3D, starring old Sid Haig.
Sid Haig.
Sid Haig, yeah, however you pronounce his name. That one felt like a fucking kick in the face. because the 3D didn't even work, and the whole reason why the thing was remade was so that the film would be in 3D, and then it was just shittier than the original.
Yeah,
Uh,
how did they get that lucrative Night of the Living Dead property? How
oh,
could they ever?
they've
Um,
remade that shit so because of public, what
it's
do you
in
call it,
yeah,
public,
it's in the public domain.
yeah,
Domain.
So every couple of years, you will see one come. We could make one,
yeah,
and they did like a colorized version of it. That's how Return of the Living Dead got kicked off. Was his collaborator, George Romero's collaborator, decided, oh, well, nobody has the rights to this. I'll just make my own series with it. And everybody else has seemed to get that idea. And I don't even know how they got their hands on like Day of the Dead. There's like Day of the Dead Contagion, Day of the Dead 2, which doesn't even make sense.
yeah.
And all these other films. I'm surprised. Dawn is really the only one that's gone untouched. Well, I think everything that needed to be said has been said about Jacob's Ladder 2019.
Yeah, it's just a big fucking waste of time.
Yeah, yeah. Never gonna get that part of my life back. That 90 minutes.
No, this was more fun.
Yeah. I wish we pretended to watch it and just talked about it with no
Just
knowledge
guess.
of the movie on this show. Yeah.
Next time we'll do that.
If there's a Jacob's Ladder 3, then I think that's what's on the menu. That's what's going to be prescribed.
One of us watch it, the other two try to review it, and then the original, whoever watched it, will tell them if they're right or not by the end.
I think I elect Hans to watch it and tell
That's-
us all about it.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm down. Let's if that gets remade, and if it's a woman,
This one,
And
if
if
this
it's-
one gets remade,
I mean not remade, but if it gets a sequel, and the female character is played by Dennis Leary, I'll be the one watching.
what would be the approach taken if they did remake Jacob's Ladder 2019? What would that look like?
Maybe a son gets cucked by his dad or something? The
Then it
cuck
just turns
element
into
is
like
the
Old
only-
Boy?
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. Fucking Jacob's Ladder 3 needs to just be a remake of the Josh Brolin Old Boy.
That's probably the most likely scenario is someone in Asia acquires this property and decides we got to remake Jacob's Ladder for our audience. It's either going to be Japanese or Chinese or Korean, and then you will get that kind of twist.
My idea was going to be you remake Jacob's Ladder 2019 with like Jackie Chan playing Michael Ealy, but in a serious role, like no kung fu or anything. Besides the kick out the window, which that would actually pay off big time. Jackie Chan at like 70 just nosediving out a window.
But
as
you
a
have
black
to
man.
you have to make it very dialogue heavy so that he speaks a lot.
But he has to act as a black man. So he can speak in like Ebonics, but
It's just
In
doing a
his
Chris
accent.
Tucker imitation.
his whole family's like black too. Like they even bring back Jesse Williams as his brother. but
Nobody
it's just him playing
acknowledges-
it straight the
yeah.
wole movie.
Nobody acknowledges the fact that he's a tiny 70-year-old Asian man.
Well, that has been this crossover spectacular. Movies, dissecting cinema, ratings. It has been quite the show.
Indeed.
Right, thanks for having me.
I think it's been good.
Relatively
Fucking
speaking.
solid outro. Leave that in. Don't you dare take that out. I think it's been good. Hard cut. Roll the fucking music.